In today's video, we're gonna review the Adams Cordless Polisher versus the SPTA Cordless Polisher. I've had quite a few questions on these, so we'll review what I like about them and what I don't like about them. Any of the products or tools that I mentioned here, including the polishers, the towels, the liquids, I'll have them linked down in the description box for you. So let's go ahead and get started with this video. Now, when it comes to using cordless polishers, there is a few drawbacks to them. Obviously, there's a lot of pros, but a few drawbacks is one, if you want to polish like an entire vehicle or like correct and polish, you're gonna need a lot of batteries because it comes with two in the packaging or with a product. But even with two, like that's not enough to do an entire vehicle, especially if you're gonna do a cutting phase and a polishing phase. You're gonna need a lot more than two batteries to get the whole vehicle done. On top of that, since there's only three settings, right? Low, medium, and high, you can't finesse the speed in certain panels as you can with a corded polisher. So that's a big drawback. And it just, to me, at my experience, is like you're a lot more limited on the types of panels that you can work. Like it's great on flat surfaces or like slightly curved surfaces, but once you actually gotta do some edge work or get into like some very like tight areas, like this would not be my go-to type of polisher. And again, we use these all the time. They're great for what we do, but think about these more as like your sidearm, not your primary weapon, right? If we need a specific thing done, if that specific situation calls for a cordless polisher, we'll use a cordless polisher. But when we have a correction and polishing and coating at our shop, then we're gonna go straight to the corded polisher just because we can do a lot more with those than we can with a cordless polisher. Okay, so let's now talk about the design. So as far as design, the main thing on this one that the Adams win is simply that one stays up while the other one doesn't. So this one, when we're done polishing and we just have to set it on the ground or a table or a chair, I can easily just do this, walk away, and it's gonna stay up. Whereas this one, unless I'm doing something wrong or there's an attachment that can counterbalance this, it's always going to fall. And that's just annoying because that means the same thing, it's the same problem with the Grits Garage 6-inch polisher, is that you can't lay it down flat because it's gonna fall over. So same thing with this, I'd like to just stand it up because it kind of makes sense since it has a base to stand up, but it's always gonna fall. And that's just a small little annoyance. And yes, of course, it's not a big deal to actually put it on the surface, but even then it's like, it's just faster to do this and stand it upright. So in terms of it just standing up and like not having to think about it, the Adams polishes win because yes, you could say, well, we could just put it down. It's like, yeah, well, I could also put down the Adams polishes like this as well, and we're good to go. Like, don't get me wrong, that's what we do for the most part. When I'm actually moving and grooving, I want to stand it up. Now let's talk about the triggers. So on this one, they're pretty different. Whereas, see, I can stand it up right here. So with the SPTA, it's going to be a button in the front with a locking button on the side. Whereas the Adams polishes, you have the button in the back, no side locking button, because you're just going to lock it in place up here. Now, as far as which one I prefer, to be honest, they're actually equal in this regard because although they're both different, they both make it very easy to actually turn it on and to lock it. Now, if I did have to choose one, I do like this style better, where you press the trigger and then lock it in. I'm just more accustomed to polishers like that than this, but again, like I would say these are equal in terms of how you actually do it. We haven't ran into any problems, or I haven't ran into any problems to where the button somehow gets in the way or it adds an extra step. Like yes, this one you just lock it all in place here, but it's not much more than doing this. So as far as actually turning on the machine and pressing the buttons, I'm gonna go that they're equal, but if I had to choose one, I do prefer the SPTA style button. Now, where the Adams polishes yet again takes the win is on the battery. On this one, on the Adams polishes, it lets you know the battery level in the front or in the back, however you want to look at this. It lets you know the battery level right here, and then it's going to tell you the speed controls up here as well. Whereas on the SPTA, unless they came out with a new model or I'm just not looking carefully enough, there is no battery indicator on this machine. It's just going to die on you. Now, they all come with a separate battery, so if one does die, you go get the new one, and assuming that you are charging the other one when it dies, that way there's always one charged, you should be fine, right? It's not like I'm always checking the battery indicator here anyways, right? Because like even if there's one bar left on this battery, we always have another one charged and ready to go. So for us, like I'm not here checking too much of the whole how much battery is left on it. The only time I actually do check the battery is if we are gonna go to a mobile job site and we need to make sure it's full. Like that's where I really prefer to see a prefer to see a full battery indicator. But as far as the shop setting, we don't really look at it because again, if it does die, we'll just grab a new one. But when we are going mobile, it would help to see, hey, are these batteries fully charged? So we prefer to look at the atoms and just click it real quick to make sure it is charged. Now let's talk about how to actually change the gears or the RPM on these polishers. So on the Adams polishes, it's gonna have the speed changes in the front of the polisher, or however you wanna look at it, but I'm gonna say the front of the polisher. And then the SPTA has the gear change in the rear or the back of the polisher. Now with this one, I give it a hands down to the SPTA in terms of where they put the buttons in order to change the gear. Because with this one, once you turn it on, you can easily just look behind you, press the button, there's only 3 settings, to put it where you want, and then you can get straight to work. Now with the Adams, it's still 3 buttons, but the problem it being is that once you put it on the, you know how you want to first like either spread the product around and then up the speed. But with this one, because it's on you, like you have to actually take it off the panel, press the button, make sure you know where it's at, and then put it back on the panel. It might sound a bit more dramatic than what I'm saying, but it is like you do actually have to take the panel off, because depending on the panel that you're working or how you're working it, like you can't see the indicators of where it's at. So you do have to remove it, make sure you're on the right one, and then get back to work. Whereas this one, just because it's on the back side of the polisher, you can stay here, work it, press the button and switch through the gears. And it just makes it much easier on the SPTA to actually change those gears. So if I'm not gonna grab the Adams polishers, it's because I don't wanna deal with that. Like that's probably its biggest drawback in terms of the design, is having the buttons on the front. Because like, especially on just a regular corded polisher, you have a lot more RPM that you can go through. As you're working a panel, you might want to change the RPM to finesse exactly what you're working, right? Whether it's a panel, a curve, the flat surface, whether it's a small, large area, whether you want to kind of sometimes finesse the RPM. You need to go a little bit faster, a little bit slower. And with this, it does make it a lot more difficult to change on the go, just because I have to kind of reach over, and I can sometimes look at it, sometimes not. And it just makes it a bit more difficult to do it here. Is this like a deal breaker? No, it's not, but it is just like a dang, like it's just one other thing I gotta kind of, add to the mix of like making sure I'm like working the tool properly. Now talking on the actual settings, each one has 3. Now I always use setting 1 to spread the product, right? Whether it's on the correction or polishing, I do use speed 1 just to spread it around. And I want to say 95% of the time, I'm actually on setting 2 when I'm actually cutting or polishing. I don't like setting 3 just because I feel it's a tad bit too fast for what I need it for. So if I go to setting 3, it's gonna be because there is a specific section that I need more power to tackle, right? So it'll just be for like maybe a little 2x2 section that needs to get worked on. Maybe I'll speed it up just for that section, and then I'll drop it back down to the 2nd setting. Like we don't stay on the 3rd setting at all. It's a bit too, even the machine itself gets a lot louder, and yes, it spins fast, but just like if it feels like it's going faster, and because I don't need it to go that fast, I'm also gonna pick up my arm speed a bit more just because I don't wanna generate that much heat on the panel. So it's a bit more finessing and tweaking with setting 3 that I don't really like, which is why, again, if we're doing a whole vehicle, I'm gonna go to the corded so I can really dial in the RPM on the polisher. And that goes for both of them. Now I will say that the on speed 3, the throw, like the speed and the throw and the rotation, is a lot more aggressive on the Adams than it is on the SPTA. And I don't think that's like, if I'm gonna go on speed 3, I would rather pick up the SPTA. Not that I let that be a determining factor, but just on this one, when you let it freely spin on speed 3, it gets very aggressive and it just almost starts like throwing itself. Whereas this one stays a lot more calm and centered on speed 3. Now you don't really see the difference when you actually have pressure on the panel with the polisher. But just overall, we don't work speed 3. It's more so of like dialed in spots that we need to. Again, it's more of a side weapon, it's more of a side arm, not your primary weapon when it comes to using these polishers. And I'm gonna end the video right there. Let me know your thoughts on which one you like more. Again, we use both of them. They both work great for when we actually need them. I'll have, again, the tools and products linked down in the description box down below. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see everyone on the next one. Bye-bye.